Hello, everyone. Welcome to Fully Booked Chats. Christmas is right around the corner, and we are bringing you an early Christmas gift. Today, we're chatting with Michelle Zauner, author of New York Times bestseller Crying in H Mart, which was also named Best Book of 2021 by Entertainment Weekly, Good Morning America, and Wall Street Journal. Fully Booked prepared an additional gift for our viewers tonight. The first 20 people who order Crying in H Mart at Fully Booked online right now will receive a free reading starter pack. The starter pack will contain Korean food and snacks, aka the perfect companion to Michelle's book. Our guest author will be interviewed by an independent pop folk singer songwriter, visual artist, author, and multi awarded creative from Manila. Reese Lansangan is a trailblazer in the Philippine indie scene who has brought her music to international shores like Japan, Singapore, New Zealand, and the USA. A song about space from her debut album Arigato Internet was chosen by NASA for their historic hashtag Launch America campaign. She also opened for and shared the stage with artists like Paramore, Lainey, and more. Last May 2021, she released her highly anticipated sophomore album, Time Well Spent. She will be interviewing our special guest author for today, Michelle Zauner. Michelle is best known as a singer and guitarist who creates dreamy, shoegaze inspired indie pop under the name Japanese Breakfast. She has won acclaim from major music outlets around the world for releases like Psychopomp in 2016 and Soft Sounds from Another Planet in 2017. This year, 2021, she released her newest album called Jubilee. Actually, the morning after this conversation was recorded, it was announced that Michelle had been nominated for two Grammy Awards, Best New Artist and Best Alternative Music Album for Jubilee. We were so excited to hear the news. Congrats, Michelle. We love you, and you are a queen. This is going to be an interesting and heartfelt conversation, and we hope you enjoy it. Let's welcome Reese and Michelle.
Hi,
Hi.
Michelle. It's so nice to meet you. I'm happy to match your walls today. Before we start the interview, I'd like to ask you where you're calling from and how you are.
I am calling from Brooklyn, New York, after some pretty rigorous touring for the past 3 months. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
very content at home to be
Mm-hmm.
cozy
On
and
break.
relaxing and, yeah, getting my
Mm-hmm.
life back together for the next few months that I have off
Mm-hmm.
and working on
Mm-hmm.
new projects.
Yeah, you mentioned that you went on tour and you're going back this March. I just wanted to ask, since we haven't actually had live audiences for such a long time, given our situation, is there anything that you had forgotten to do or you had to relearn how to do in terms of touring or performing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like, going back on tour, it felt like it was going to be the most like the greatest thrill to be back, but it was more, there was more trepidation than I think a lot of us anticipated, just because we weren't sure if we were doing the right thing, and we had heard of other bands having breakthrough cases. So there was some nervousness about that. And also, I think it just, after a year and a half of not touring, and also our profile growing so much this past year, I feel like I had to relearn like my swagger in a really big way. I was definitely like I had a lot of performance anxiety and nerves that I had to conquer, which I felt like I hadn't had to confront in many years. And that was definitely a real adjustment for me, because I don't think I used to get so nervous. And
Mhm.
now it just feels like, even though I've been doing this for so long, the stakes are so high that I think it was kind of getting to me in the beginning.
Yeah, I understand that. And also, there's, yeah, anxiety in that because it's still an ongoing thing, but it's a brave thing for you to get out there and also meet your fans. You have so many, and I'm sure it's only grown because of the success of your book. And I know that we experienced a lot of firsts during this like pandemic, and for you, it's being a debut author, doing your memoir and writing in the pandemic, and also making music. Um, how was that experience for you, and how was that navigating everything through this like weird time?
I think it was tough because, I had finished the record in December 2019, and it was just like supposed to come out in summer of 2020, and it was pushed back a year, and then all of these huge creative projects like ended up all coming out in the same year when they were kind of supposed to come out a little bit more separate from one another. So it was just like such a crazy whirlwind, but I do think it puts into perspective like what is really important. Like I remember initially I was just like I can't believe I can't go to like Europe to do press or whatever. And like in retrospect, it was like a very spoiled thinking of just the things that you personally lost. And I think that it's really opened me up to consider, more of what other people are going through during this time, and how like comfortable and lucky that I have it. And it's made me appreciate where I'm at in my life like a lot more.
That's beautiful. I wanted to also ask, since we're on the topic, how do you think writing like long form nonfiction, especially if it's about your life, how does that differ from writing your music? Because music is very fragmented, and you can be, you can afford to be very vague and very artful with your words, whereas in nonfiction, you sort of have to tell it as it is. And also, there are people who are going to be reading this who are in your life, who's kind of check the, I don't know, the authenticity or the honesty of like everything that's there. How do you think that's different?
Yeah, I mean, it's super different. I would say that it feels like a somewhat less, there are parts of it that feel kind of similar to writing lyrics. There are these kind of creative intuitions that you have, and these sensitivities as a human being that you lean into. But it certainly takes a lot longer. There are a lot more words involved. And, I don't know if it was just because it was my first book, but there was a lot of feeling around in the dark and really second guessing a lot of stuff. Whereas I think when I am first writing a song, I feel very sure about it, at least in the composition points or in the lyric writing process. I don't think I have as much self-doubt as I do with writing a book, because there's so many more rules, and because it's such a new medium for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. I had the experience of writing like a very short, co-writing a very short prose and poetry book, and I feel the exact same way as you, where you say in songs, when I'm writing songs, I feel like I'm more sure, or I feel like I have a better intuition as to what is good, what works, and what my taste is. But as for poetry, especially, I feel like I don't have enough references to kind of counter check if I'm doing it correctly or if I'm actually following the form and stuff. So I definitely think that it's quite like a very different experience, and you did so well with your debut. I mean, everyone loves it, and I just want to congratulate you on that.
Thank you, Reese.
I wanted also to show you a couple of fan videos that people submitted, because Fullybook asked your fans to do like a mukbang style video with their favorite comfort food. And the favorite video of Fullybook, we want to show that to you. And the winner is Louise Nugget, and her favorite comfort food is salmon aburi. And just like that, Crying in H Mart, she thinks, is a book that's authentic, nutritional, and most importantly, Asian. So I hope that you're ready to watch her video
Yeah, I'm so
review.
excited.
Sana, I have here my favorite comfort food and my new favorite comfort book from one of my favorite comfort musicians, Japanese Breakfast or J Brecky, or Michelle Zauner, which is Crying in H Mart. So in this novel, she talks about her grief from when her mother died. She talks about her identity crisis as an Asian American, and of course, her love for food, or mostly Korean food. And I think for her to unearth all of the emotions and all of the grief that she felt like years ago, for us to actually enjoy it in this one single masterpiece, I think that's very generous and brave of her. And as a huge fan, this is a refreshing side to see, because I know Jay Brecky as a musician, and to know that she also writes beautifully. It's just chef's kiss for me. So yeah, I have 10 seconds to talk. And if you want to get a copy and enjoy this book just like how I did, you can get one. You can get a copy from Fully Booked. It's available. So see.
Yay! Thank
Yay.
you, Louise. I hope
Thank you,
that
Louise.
that was. There are a lot of fans who really love your book, and I hope you get to see eventually all the video submissions that they submitted. I think they posted it online on TikTok and Instagram everywhere. I hope you get to see them. We actually want to start talking about crying in H Mart. I actually have my copy here. I have a lot of markings. I don't know if you
Oh
can see
my
that.
God.
The markings actually mean something. Like
It
the
looks like
purple
it has a
one,
disease.
like smallpox or something.
Yeah.
The markings actually mean something. Like the purple ones are the ones that the parts that really made me sad.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
the pink ones are the lines that I really love. Green ones are more like character or the like something to do with the world that you are in, and then the yellow ones are the ones that made me laugh. So there are a couple of
Wow, Reese,
yellow
that's so
ones.
cute.
Oh, thank you. But there are a lot of purple parts there that like just heart wrenching. My favorite lines are here, but a lot of people may not know that Crying in H Mart started as an essay that you wrote for Glamour magazine, and you actually won Essay of the Year. Am I right?
Yeah.
Can you tell me more about how this book came to be? The origins of that from that essay.
Sure. Yeah. So in 2016, I was living in New York and I was working in advertising. My mom had passed in 2014. And I had always kind of been a sort of struggling musician and took that as a sign, I'm 25 years old. If it hasn't happened for me, maybe it's time to move on. And so I got a very corporate job in New York and was working 9 to 5, but I was just so unfulfilled during that time. So I, would work all day and then I would drive to Crown Heights, which is a neighborhood in Brooklyn, to work on mixing my first record, Psychopomp. And then like on weekends and stuff, I just needed to have a sort of creative project. And I think part of it was I just really struggled to understand what had happened. My mom got cancer and, she was sick for 6 months before passing away. And my whole life fell apart in like this in 1 year, and I think that it was really hard for me to relate to friends and communicate what I was feeling to other people. And so I wanted to write this essay particularly about Mangchi, who's a Korean YouTube vlogger. And I thought it was just kind of like a cute story between me and this woman I never met who had kind of helped me in such a tremendous way navigate grief in this through this very particular activity. And so I submitted it everywhere. I spent the next year like submitting this essay to like every essay contest that didn't have an entry fee and every food blog, and no one wanted it. And then like every month or so I would get like a rejection letter trickled in to work. And then 9 months later, I found out I won Glamour magazine's Essay of the Year. I had totally forgotten I had even submitted. I thought it was like a spam message. Yeah, and then I won like $5,000 and like a meeting with a literary agent who ended up being my literary agent, and we kept in touch. And yeah, I quit my job and went on tour. And a couple years later, I reached out to that agent about this book that I was working on.
Mm-hmm. Did you have an idea? Like, I'm sure I don't know if you were ready to actually do a full length version of your essay where you think you were personally or emotionally ready to convey so much, because this book is very raw and very honest and very you were able to be very vulnerable with your pain and like the experience of grief that you actually went through. How were you able to find the courage and the fearlessness to actually put everything on paper and have everybody read it?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I've been asked this before, and I think that's just naturally the way that I've always interacted with art. I think maybe I'm just like too stupid to like write fiction or like not write something like from the core of my being. I
Mhm,
feel like that's always been art that hits me the hardest. It's always art
mhm,
that I've like worked on. And I think as a musician, you kind of have, you're kind of making music in that way, but there's more to sort of hide behind. And yeah, I think that so much of why I wrote this book was because I was so angry, that no one had told me that this is what death looked like. No one had told me this is what disease and illness looks like. And I just needed to let it all go. And the only way I knew how was to explain exactly what happened and try to get at the core of what I was feeling. There's a line in the book where I say something along the lines of, while I struggled to be good, I could excel at being bold. And I think that that's kind of been my crutch in a way, where I don't know if I have the capacity to be the most like verbose or skillful craftsman of a writer, but I think that what I do have is the ability to expose myself shamelessly, and that's what I kind of leaned into.
And you're the only one who can do that. I think that it's beautiful that you were able to capture all these emotions, especially at the time when it just happened, and when everything's sort of fresh in your mind. Because in my personal experience, as I move farther and farther away from the time where I experienced grief, the shape of it kind of softens, and it becomes a bit hazy. And I think it's special that you were able to kind of like take a picture of it, like a very clear picture of what your grief looks like. And even though it's hard to kind of look back on it and check whatever those feelings were that you felt, it's precious that you were able to preserve that, and also in return give your readers such a beautiful and well-rounded picture of who your mom was to you and to other people who loved her. So I really love what you did.
Thank you.
I guess I would like to ask also what your favorite part of writing the book, what your favorite part and what's the hardest part about writing this book for you?
I think my favorite part has to do a lot with what you touched on, where I think that there was this like real, there was a real desire to, oh my gosh. Sorry.
It's okay. I heard your alarm, I think.
Yeah, sorry, my manager is calling me. He doesn't see that I'm doing an important thing. I was like, shouldn't you know my schedule?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that it was most important to me to capture, just the devastation of grief. But also, like, I wanted it to be a real love letter to my mother, and I wanted to almost prove to everyone that I like loved her the most in this way, and I knew her the most deeply, because I think it was also like, my mom and I had such a tumultuous relationship when I, as an adolescent, that it really worried me that, her friends or, even my family would think that like I didn't have a great relationship with my mother. I did have a really beautiful and good relationship with my mother. It was just complicated because we were just so intertwined with one another's lives in this way that I think mothers and daughters can often get. And so I just wanted to capture every detail in a way. And I think it's really beautiful what you said, because I think I did want to preserve that, before that things got too hazy, maybe. Like, I think that that's just naturally what happened. And so there was a sense of urgency to capture my mom in all of her detail. And so it was most fun for me to remember those types of details, because it made me feel like I was reliving these types of memories with her. Like, even just small things like the way that my mother would order her food, or, details about like her favorite type of ice cream, but also, just remembering that she had like a vaccination scar, or like the way that she just was, these personal details of her. That was my favorite part to revisit, or parts of my childhood, and my fond memories of growing up in Oregon, and writing about that was a real joy. I think the hardest chapter for me, and I've talked about this before, is this chapter called Living and Dying. I think the darkest part of that whole experience was when we found my mother's cancer was terminal. She was going to discontinue her chemotherapy treatment. And so we all did this trip to Korea for her to say goodbye to her family as a way to like kind of choose living over dying. And instead of it working out in this like fairy tale kind of way where we had this beautiful vacation, she pretty much landed straight in the hospital and went into septic shock. And, it was seeming like she was going to die there. I had kind of like blocked out that memory for some time because it was just so dark that having to wade through it. I remember when I got to the part where I kind of had a real arc of a narrative and I was sort of skipping around through chapters. And that chapter was always something that I just like, I had to really chip away at, because if I stayed too long there, it was just it was just so much crying at a laptop for that chapter in particular. But ultimately, like, I think that I was able to portray, I think I learned so much about craft through that chapter, because, specifically there was a moment where, my dad and I were probably outside of the hospital for 1 or 2 hours. And we had left the room thinking my mom was about to go on a ventilator. And we had to decide, how long we were going to sustain her life this way. But I couldn't really remember like what we talked about or what we did for that hour. But it was so important to like reconstruct that hour to get a sense of like what was really happening. For it to be believable that we could come back and she could have recovered in this way. So kind of like really like diving into like that hour and just all the minutia of like two people talking who are going through this very heavy thing that's simultaneously connected but also very separate. I think I learned so much about writing and the tools that you can and the tricks that you can kind of apply to that I'm really looking forward to kind of reusing that experience when I write my next piece.
There's a promise, maybe, of a next piece. Thank you so much for answering that in so much detail. That was very enlightening for me, especially those capturing those small parts of your mom that meant, that make up all of her in your memory. And I loved hearing that. And one of the things that obviously I felt translated through the book was your love for food, and your discovery of Korean food, especially, and also making Korean food for your family and for yourself. Um, and I think that you really anchored the narrative on the experience of food being identity, or being a source of comfort, and even like relational, like a means of relational interaction. What made you decide to make food the cornerstone of your memoir?
I think that the first essay that I think it was just a natural thing that happened in my life. I think that after my mom passed away, I just found myself looking into these videos and learning how to cook Korean food and going to H Mart. And then I just had this realization. I just asked myself, why am I doing this? It was just a natural like desire to go to the space. Like, I think it was the second Christmas after she had died, and I was spending time with my husband's parents, and I felt very comforted that I had this new family, but also very alone, and I went to H Mart, I think on kind of a whim, alone, like around Christmas time, to eat food. And it was kind of this, like very much like the first chapter, observing all of these people and wondering if, anyone else was like really reading into this experience the way that I was. And I think that I really just set out to answer that question of why food. And that was always going to be this sort of major thematic vehicle of observing this. And it was a real, just like touchstones to explore these different types of memory and how they relate to food.
In relation to that, do you see any parallels between food, like the food preparation, and the long process of grief and healing? Like, is there anything observable that you can draw out?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there, towards the end of the book, that real connection is made when I am sort of reflecting on memory and making kimchi. And I think that this could be about any food, but I think that food is like such a sensory rich experience, obviously, and there is this kind of like creative, intuitive nature to it, in the same way that the music is kind of like. And certainly we all have like memories from a very early age of food and the dishes that our parents maybe made for us, or different family members or caretakers. But for me, I think that that major connection happens towards the end of the book, where I talk about, changing the course of decay. And I think that, that's what fermentation is. That's what making kimchi is you're preserving something that would have rotted without your care. And you're turning it into something that can be enjoyed and stored and eaten. And I think for me, that was an apt metaphor for how you can look at grief. I could have chosen to stay very angry, and I could have chosen to like bury memories of my mother. But I think that in writing this book, and also in having an activity like cooking, I was able to kind of preserve and look back at these memories of my mother, and kind of create a new life for them that I can preserve and enjoy in this way. And so, yeah, I think that was important for me, because for so long it was very difficult to remember my mom without the sort of trauma of like her illness. And so I needed to really actively rework that memory in order to continue to enjoy it. And that was kind of how I saw parallels between and grief and.
I love what you said about kimchi, and also in my very basic knowledge of making kimchi and like consuming kimchi, you spend a lot of time obviously working on kimchi and fermenting everything and preparing everything, and then you make it in batches, like you make it in a big batch, and then you open it every so often and enjoy it in small doses. And I think that that's also, I guess, in a way, how I see revisiting good memories, even sad memories. You have a lot of them, but you kind of savor them or consume them in small doses, because you kind of want to preserve and prolong that special feeling or that big feeling. Um, and I think like as a Filipino, also like as an Asian, I like food is very much like there's a huge element of service that is attached to food. Like my aunts, my uncles, my grandma, who loves to cook, always cooks for the family. They're always, the first to get up, and they're always the last to eat. And they, after everyone has eaten, they would be the ones to kind of clean up the plates and wash the dishes. And it's all very other oriented. And I love how that you also showed the switch from your mom taking care of you and you taking on that role towards the end of her life. So I really love the use of food that you incorporated in the book, and I love the beautiful descriptions of Korean food that you loved and grew up eating, and it really made me want to try so much Korean food that I haven't. So thank you for that. Thank you so much for sharing that. Like, I really loved hearing that. Um, my other question is, I think this is something that I also grapple with a lot, and I talk about like death a lot in my own work, in my own songwriting, and in my own music. How has your relationship with mortality and death sort of changed with with your mom's battle through cancer?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, when I was a teenager, I was obsessed with death, in this very like angsty, morose way, that I truly believed that I didn't fear death, and that, life was miserable. And my mom used to say this thing where she was like, if anything bad actually happened to you, like you would feel very differently. And I was like, you don't understand my pain, Mom, whatever. And she like was so right, you know, and I hate that. Like, I mean, she was so right about everything. And, you know, I think that after my mom passed away, like death just felt so close to me, that I felt like I had so little time to say and do the things that I wanted that it really lit a fire in me in a big way. And I think I poured so much of my grief, honestly, and so much of this realization and this fixation on mortality into my work ethic. It made me into an incredibly ambitious person. And I feel like why I have had so much creative output over the last few years after my mom passed away is because, you know, I realized as my mom died of GI cancer, my aunt died of GI cancer. It runs in my family in a serious way. It's very likely that I might get a GI cancer. I just want to make sure that I put everything out. I do everything that I want to, and I put everything out there that I want to say before it's too late. But yeah, I think that, you know, unfortunately, it's made me a much more nervous person. I'm very, there's some like PTSD certainly about just always being afraid that the people that I love are going to die at any moment. Even when my like husband goes to like park the car and is gone for an extra 5 minutes, I'm always like, oh, it's an accident, right? You know, like it feels like so around me in this way that is a blessing and a curse. I think it forces you to kind of appreciate life more often, but I think it makes you a little bit more nervous of a person.
I can definitely relate to that. Sometimes I feel like if I'm just in the house and there's a ceiling fan, the ceiling fan is on, I feel like it's gonna fall on me. I'm so painfully aware of death that can happen anytime, especially experiencing something so sudden that like every time I also sleep in the car, I feel like, oh, okay, are we gonna get into a car accident? Am I gonna smash my head? Like it makes me like my mind goes uncontrollably like morbid, but it's also made me fear my own death. But just a short follow-up, do you feel like you fear dying, or you just you don't really think about it, you just want to like put everything, make everything, and just live my life?
I do. I think that like I also like, you know, I don't know if I had so much anxiety about it when beforehand. Like even I remember like during turbulence on planes and stuff, I don't think that ever bothered me until after my mom passed away. But I think it's, you know, like we're still young, so of course like I'm not ready. I have like so much more to prove. I think that like, and things are going so well that I really don't want them to end right now, you know.
Yeah, I agree. And you have really done so much. Actually, really admire so many of the things that you put out. I really love it, and it's a wonderful thing to see unfold after everything that has happened. I also want to talk about you as like an author and as a musician in general, especially because this is like a very like a big topic of interest for me. I guess I want to start with your Korean roots and how you think it has shaped you as a creative, and also growing up in Eugene, Oregon. Like you're in touch with your Korean roots with your mom, and then also living as an American in Eugene. How do you think that has shaped you as a creative and the creative that you are right now?
Yeah, I don't think I had much of an idea of how to answer this question until writing the book, actually, and then kind of observing my life in this very detailed way. But I think that a lot of what shaped me as a creative was growing up in Oregon, particularly as an only child living sort of outside of town. So in retrospect, like I think I had a pretty lonely childhood in a way that I didn't even realize. But you know, I had no siblings. I had no neighboring children to play with. I was really like cooped up with my mom a lot, and you know, she would get pretty tired of me. So I really had to make my own fun, and I think that made my like interior world's like very rich because I created all these kinds of like stories in my head and interacted with them in this way because I was alone.
Yeah,
So
I
I
understand.
think that I'm also used to like that kind of long solitude that it takes to work on creative stuff. Sometimes too, like I think I'm very accustomed to like exploring things on my own periods of time, and that really from my child upbringing it. And I think that in terms of like my career roots, there's definitely like a real what's the word, like that I think in a lot of Korean culture, the parents are very, very intensive about like studying and extracurriculars. And that was really instilled in me from a young age. And so I think that there's always this burden of like self-improvement that I feel that has really propelled me as an artist. Like I feel like I can always hear my mom being like, you're not doing enough, or like, you need to push further, or like, no one owes you anything. And so I'm always like pushing to like take lessons to become a better musician, or like, I'm always reading something to like help inform my art in some ways. I'm always like trying to think of how to work better, I guess, and more efficiently. And I think that really comes from my mother's caretaking and how she raised me.
I think that's definitely an asset. I have a younger sister, but she came 6 years after I was born, so I can relate somehow to that feeling of making your own fun, finding your own craft projects, learning everything on your own. Because when your parents are away and when your parents are working, nobody really teaches you these things. No, like we didn't have YouTube then, so everything had to be learned by observing or by looking at the TV or by reading something on a book. So I definitely have picked that up as like a work ethic as an adult, and I definitely see that in you as well. So it's interesting that you mentioned that. I also know that you went on tour with like an all girl Asian American lineup with Mitski and Jason. And how's that experience? And also, what do you think is the future of Asian Americans, especially female Asian Americans, in music, art, and writing?
Yeah, I think it was an incredibly charmed first tour experience. Before Japanese Breakfast, I was in a band called Little Big League, and it was a kind of like a emo punk band with, three white dudes. And I would go on these tours that were like, 17 men and like be the only
Yeah,
girl.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And similarly, the people who came to those shows, it was like 80% white guys. And I guess I didn't think much about it until I went on this tour with three, with Jae-sam and Mitski, these incredibly talented women. And then I also got to see a demographic that was way more representative of what we looked like. I mean, there were probably at least 70% were women at the shows,
Asian.
young girls, and then a lot of them were Asian American
Mhm.
young girls. And that was the first time I ever saw that space, and it felt very comfortable for me, and it felt very exciting. And yeah, I mean, it was a really charmed experience, and it stuck with me. It will stick with me forever. I feel so grateful to Mitski, because I think that, the way that in the generation that we were raised, like there was this scarcity mentality where she could have felt like, I have to maintain this position as like the
Yeah.
only indie girl, the only Asian American in Iraq. And instead she extended a hand to both me and Jason and said, let's share this. Like there's plenty of room for all of us. And it totally changed my career. I mean, I feel like I owe so much to her and that gift that she gave me, but it's made me want to make sure to do that, to bring other opener, whenever we have the opportunity to bring an opening band, to make sure that it's the band members are maybe from more marginalized communities, or just try to make sure that the tour party is as diverse as possible, even in our own crew and the people that we bring on tour. And yeah, I think that shapes our industry, because, you know, even now, like, you can see, like, that gives so many people their start. And now, like, I think it's a much more diverse landscape in terms of music. And instead of just having one Asian American you look up to, you can see like people like Nikki or you in the pop world, or like you can see people like Jason and Mitski and me in the indie world. You can see Rina Sawayama in the pop world. You can see Yeji in the electronic world. There's so many different, you know, like women in music that I think are all doing very different things, and we can all appreciate them separately based on merit and talent and, you know, their sound instead of just our representation.
Yeah, and you can't just lump them all together, and you get to appreciate them individually. And I think that's a great insight that you mentioned, that you want to be more inclusive, and also you're more mindful about who you're getting for your tour crew, and also opening acts. I think the simple act of kindness, of extending like a chance to somebody who might not have this chance available to them, is a very valuable thing to be offered, and to also like have the experience to take. And obviously, it has made a mark on you when Mitski extended the invitation for you to tour with her. And I think the next people that you invite on tour will carry on that same mentality and gratitude, and having that in mind, that will just create ripples and ripples and ripples, and that's what changes the landscape. I mean, we have a long way to go, but thankful for everyone who really gives space for people who really need it. So thanks for that. I have if I may share like a quite a personal story. I have a lot of regret about me becoming a musician and not having my dad be around to see it, because my dad was the one who pushed music to me. Not really pushed, but like he was the one who played the guitar, and he played the trumpet, and he would make me sing for every family reunions, and I used to hate it but also kind of loved it. And the reason why I learned guitar in the first place was when I lost him. The guitar was just lying there, and I wanted to kind of carry on the legacy of music that he imparted on me. And now that I actually have made some sort of career in music, I kind of feel really like really sad that he's not around to see it, or he's not even around for me to ask questions about, hey, what do you think of this song, or even like send me to a gig or something. How can you relate to this? Like, especially given that so much of your success came after your mom passed away, and for all of her, worries about your future, about like you doing well and stuff. How do you feel about reaching achieving so many things after her death?
Yeah, I mean, it's so bittersweet, because I mean, who's to say that you would have dived into music so deeply or learned how to play the guitar if your dad was still with you, and I think that that's exactly how I feel. Like, I don't know if I ever would have achieved this success if my mom hadn't passed away, because their book wouldn't exist and these albums wouldn't exist. And I don't think that I would have I don't know, I could have still been like sort of skirting around my own voice in my old band. And I don't know. I think that for me, as a non-religious person, there is some suspension of disbelief that has to happen, in which I just believe that she knows somehow, like, I don't really believe in an afterlife. I don't really believe in ghosts or anything, but there is a deep part of myself that just likes to believe that she knows. And I can't explain it, and it makes no sense, and it's scientifically impossible. But I like to think that she knows and can see it all. And I'd like to think that she has a hand in it somehow, like, I like to think that, my mom knows when I like wear a Chanel suit on a magazine, and, it's like, I told you.
Like, when you're taking care of your skin or not taking care of your skin.
I like to think that she knows when I put on sunscreen, And so I just let myself believe it, even though it makes no sense. And I think that's the only thing that we can do.
Mhm.
And that, we are where we are because of what they taught us
Mhm.
and what they gave us.
I think that's beautiful, and I also would like to believe that my dad also knows here, and it's the only way to carry on. Um, I wanna touch on something that might be a bit niche, and this is like not a serious topic. This is fun for me because I've always looked at, even before your book came out and stuff. I've always looked at your website. Always looked at your merchandise, and I've always loved everything that's on there. I've always
Oh,
seen it as
thank you.
one of my inspirations, because merch is something that is also important to me, like making merch, designing merch, and like kind of conceptualizing stuff to sell to people. Um, you even have a game on your website, and I think it's so fun. All the things that you put out, and I just wanna ask you, I guess, what you think the relationship of merchandise is to with building the different worlds of your music, and seeing that as an extension of the experience of your music.
Yeah, that's a great question. I love that. Very, from an early age, like the bands that I loved. I mean, most of them are escaping me right now. But when I think about merch, I think about Mount Erie or Phil Elverum from the Microphones, and there's just so much like care and detail and personhood that's put into everything that he does, that I like the idea of like a thoughtfulness in
Mhm.
everything that you do as an artist, from the music that you make to your lyrics to the merch that you have to the way that you dress to the background. I think that as much thought can go into the details, that people will feel very taken care of as a fan. And for me, like, I feel very close to an artist like Mount Erie when I receive like a handwritten note. And so that was a really big part of Japanese Breakfast early on in my career. Before I had a manager or anything, I would mail out these little cassette tapes and I would write individual notes to everyone and collage the packaging. And it was just something that I felt like I could do to connect. And I don't have the time or capacity to do that on this level anymore, but I do like to be very involved, because it's also just like, it's great. You have to spend money commissioning an artist, that you should commission an artist that you like. And so just over the years, I've like met all these really brilliant artists that I like, and will follow them online. And then I get to like commission, some idea I have, or sometimes just let them run with it. And I've met some really incredible artists, and I really love our merch because of that. And yeah, I think it was also just like at a young age, I also liked going to like stationery stores, like the
Yeah,
Sanrio store and stuff. And
yeah,
like, I think that kind of weirdly carried on over to like having my own little shop that I get to
yeah,
like kind of curate. And
yeah,
it's a fun part of the
exactly.
job. But also financially, like, and logistically, merch is such a huge part of making it as an artist. And so I
Mhm.
remember when we went on that Mitski tour, we made like $250 a show, which is not, which is like, was great for us at the time. But, at those, the way that we were able to sustain ourselves financially was because, we would make probably just about that or double in merch, because everyone would
Mhm.
buy the stuff afterwards. And that was
Yeah.
a really huge part of it. So pretty early on, I realized that in order to be able to like financially survive on the road, you had to have really good merch, and you had to
Mhm.
like really like hawk it in order to make it through a tour, because it was such a huge part of the income that you were making. And
Mhm.
especially when your guarantees were lower, that was essential that you had good merch.
It's also, I think merch is also a way of accessing other people's interests. Like if you see somebody wearing merch that like of a band that you can be like, love that band too.
Yeah,
And it
totally.
could be like an instant point of connection. And also, since I like buying things from other people as well, like I love supporting artists merch, it's also something that I appreciate seeing in artists that I love. Especially, I love the fact that you mentioned that there's a thoughtfulness to everything that you do, even the way that you color the stage, and even in your makeup. And to segue to that, I think that I noticed that you kind of use color to capture certain eras of your music.
Yeah.
Most notably with Jubilee, you use a lot of yellow and orange. And obviously, Jubilee is like the other side of the spectrum, the emotional spectrum, from being very very sad and contemplative, from psychopomp and soft sounds. You go like triumphant kind of with Jubilee with a yellow. Do you think this is like an intentional thing that you do? Do you choose colors to describe or like define a musical era? Because that's something that I also personally observe with my own music. Like my first album is purple and pink, and then my current album is green, like olive green, not leaf green, like olive green.
Yeah, I don't think I thought much about it until this record. And yellow was a very conscious decision. Partially because, it's such a happy, like unused color. And I was like going through a yellow phase clearly when I was working on that album. But it was also like, I think for the third album, I like could finally have albums, my discography exist in sort of context with one another. And so I was looking at Psychopomp, which has like dominated by this kind of sky blue color, and then Soft Sounds, which is very moody and dark, and it's like this black and red. It felt like the next thing in the catalog was going to be this new color. And
Something
so
bright,
yeah, something bright and uplifting. And so that was I knew I wanted to wear a yellow dress and have all of these kind of warm tones.
The album cover, by the way, is very like it's just stunning. I could
Thank
stare at it
you.
all day. It's so beautiful. What about projects, or like musical projects or artistic projects or writing projects? What kind of project do you feel happiest embarking on? Like just blissfully happy.
I just love working on like starting from scratch, like the very initial stage, like beginning stages of working on a new project is I think when I'm the happiest. And then also when things like you can like you've just been inside of it and you like take a moment to look and it's like you can see it, it's like close, and you've like really made a thing. I don't know, I guess I just love it all really, but I just love making things.
Yeah, I mean that's very evident because you have done so many. You directed your music videos. I'm sure you have a hand with your like how you present yourself physically. Always love your makeup. Always love your wardrobe.
Thank you.
You're an acclaimed writer. You're an amazing songwriter as well, and a musician. Um, I guess as a like multi hyphenate, I don't know how you feel about that term, but as somebody who seems to do it all, what is next for you? Like, what's the next project that you feel like you wanna try? You've also recently scored a video game, like very beautiful work there.
Thank you. Yeah, I hope there's another job like that comes my way, because I do like the experience of directing my own projects, but I also had so much fun working on that one that I love contributing to someone else's like greater vision too. I found that to be very enjoyable. So I hope that someday another project like that comes my way. The next thing that I really have to do is work on the screenplay for Crying in H Mart. MGM, so Ryan has optioned it, and so I have to write the screenplay for that over the next few months, and that's my main project. And then after that, probably another book, another record.
That's another
cycle,
another feather to your cap. I actually am very excited for your casting choices. I'm really looking forward to that, and I hope that you find the perfect people that
Me
you
too.
would
I'm
be
looking
super
forward
happy
to that
with.
too.
Congratulations
Thank
on the
you.
movie deal, by the way. thank you so much for being in conversation with me. I really loved your answers, and I'm very enlightened. And thank you so much for being so
Thanks,
open.
Reese.
I would love to actually bring some questions from your fans. There are a couple of them who sent in video questions and really thoughtful questions. I think you would enjoy hearing them. So I wanna I wanna show you the first person who's gonna ask. His name is Chris Lakdao.
I'm Chris, and I was wondering if there was any sentence, paragraph, or chapter from your book that you would have wanted your mom to read and why. That's
Mm.
it. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question that no one's asked me before. There's a part in the book where my mom says, the first thing that comes to mind is when my mom says, "I've just never met someone like you before." I think that I think for both of us that was a major turning point and something that she would remember. And I think that I would have loved to have revisited that moment with her and talked about that moment with her, because I also feel like my mom had this like real sensitivity that many artists have, that I don't think, that I could very well be reading into it because, she's gone now. But I feel like she was deeply moved by somewhat ordinary human experiences, which is so much of what art is. And I think I really got that from her. Sometimes I catch myself saying things that I feel like she, like expressing something like that about, an interaction that I feel like really comes from her. And I think even just the way that she said that, there is a very, it's not like I put those words in her mouth. I mean, she said them. And I think there's something very poetic about that. And she meant it to be poetic. I would love to have revisited that moment with her.
Thank you for answering. It's great that you have actually an answer in your head. That's quite tricky. I feel like I wouldn't know what to pick. There's so many great parts in your book. I wanna bring up Sebastian Ang's question as well.
Hello, I just wanted to ask, how do you think has grief or the grieving process changed in quarantine or the pandemic? And what do you think you could tell someone who experienced loss in quarantine?
I mean, that's a hard one. I don't know like what it would be like to have. I mean, I will say that when my mom passed away, it felt like everything that happened on top of that was just a literal slight from God. My dad got in this horrible car accident, and like everything that was happening to us on top of her, my mom's death was just like, are you serious? So I can imagine going through quarantine and then on top of that, grief in that process would feel so oppressive, because you're already dealing with something, and then to not even have a network or having to like deal with that and so much isolation. I can't even imagine what that was like. I mean, I think that the thing that I've learned from grief that I found myself drawing on during the quarantine was just taking things a day at a time, and just how little control we have over our little world, I think for me, like looking back at my grief, I realized there's just no skipping steps, and there's so much of just waiting and trudging and through the hard stuff until one day it's a little bit easier. But I think that of lockdown that way, of just like, there's nothing I can do but just wait for this to be over and do my part, and slowly things will change over time. And yeah, that's I guess what I've learned from that.
And then lastly, Yumi Tokoyo has another question for you.
What do you think about the recent rise in popularity of Korean culture all over the world? And as a Korean, has this influenced your self-identity in any way?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's certainly, I think that as difference in general has been more and diversity has been celebrated more, it's certainly easier for me to um, like love that part of my identity, which was something that I was not so engaged with when I was younger. I think I was just I think as an artist, I really wanted to just be taken seriously as a person, that I didn't want all of these different kind of modifiers to that. I didn't want to be an Asian American artist. I just wanted to be an artist, and I wanted everyone to interact with my art on like a neutral playing field. But I think that now, like, I've just developed such an amazing community of Asian American artists and friends online, and a lot of Korean American, met so many more Korean American people now that I don't live in a town that's 98% Caucasian. And yeah, it's been the celebration of Korean culture has been a very welcome, new thing in my life. And I'd love to see, I don't think that my book would have been as popular if that wasn't sort of happening. And yeah, I feel very lucky for and happy for the next generation who get to just feel a lot of pride in their heritage. And when I was growing up, people didn't know where South Korea was when I was in middle school. So things have changed quite a bit, and I feel a great joy in that.
I know you said that you don't really follow anyone, like any K-pop bands or anything at work. Has that changed since you have done interviews that said that you don't follow them?
I mean, I'm not like a big, I like indie music, like boring indie music. So like I didn't really, I can appreciate it though. I mean, I do really love, especially like the high budget creative content
Production, yeah.
of like a BTS or Blackpink video. Like, I think that I'm like seeing all of the like these very high level creatives construct something for a massive audience is really interesting and exciting. And it's rich with like inspiration. But yeah, I don't know too many K-pop groups beyond that, or I couldn't tell you like more than 3 BTS songs, I think. But I don't know, maybe that will change. I don't know.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. But I think that I think you would appreciate their like the art side of it, like the graphic design aspect, like all the promotion. They also promote very differently. Like they have a weird promotional schedule that really works. So I think it's interesting to study as a musician and as somebody who also releases a lot of merch and a lot of beautiful graphics. I think you would like there's a lot to be like appreciated in that aspect. But before I let you go, I think I would love to ask you a couple of short interview segments. This is just a couple of like fast talk things. What is your theme song? I'm gonna give you a situation, and then if you can think of any song that you are reminded of, you don't have to think too hard. But I'm just gonna give you something, and then you can throw a title back at me. And if I don't know it, I'm gonna definitely list it and add it to my playlist to make myself be more cultured. Okay, so are you ready? Do you feel ready? All right. So the first situation is long road trips with friends.
I feel like what's the song? Modest Mouse, Tiny Cities Made of Ashes was like a big road trip song. When I was a teenager, I would like listen to that and drive around.
Okay, so it's like a personal memory to you. How about your childhood?
My childhood, my childhood, I think they're called the Trogs. My parents had this CD. I don't even think it was a Trog CD. I think it was like some kind of compilation CD because it had like a jukebox on it. But I loved that song Wild Thing when I was like 5 years old. And I was like such a wild thing of a kid that I feel like that would be my childhood theme song.
All right. Perfect. How about Sunday morning with a cup of coffee?
Um, I guess I'd have to do like a Elliott Smith song.
Hmm.
Um, I'm trying to think of like a like Waltz number 2 or something.
Okay. A breakup from a toxic relationship.
This song has been my breakup song since I was like 16 years old. It's Wilco's "She's a Jar." I always listen to that song after every breakup I've gone through. Hopefully,
Like a
there's no
recurring
more.
thing. No, no, no. There's no more. It ends there. Cooking dinner for family.
Cooking dinner for family. Oh, what's that, Peter? What's that George Harrison song?
Bless you, Lord.
Oh yeah, I think I like old man music now, but I love George Harrison's My Sweet Lord, and I feel like that's such a like, you know, family like
Jiggly.
yeah.
Hi to Peter. He's such an amazing person from your book. So I'd just like to say hi. How about a song after finishing a tour?
Ooh, good one. What have I been listening to? I feel like I just like need silence when I like come home from tour. Lately I've been really wanting to get the Joanna, like I really respect that Joanna Newsom doesn't have any of her music on Spotify because she's like badass. But so my Christmas request is to get all the Joanna Newsom vinyl, Peter, for Christmas. And I think that like after tour, I kind of want something chill but like semi-cerebral to like load up again, which I feel like Joanna Newsom is. So so I would say like Joanna Newsom's Emily.
And her voice would be such a great thing to listen to. Just like very sweet. Okay. Lastly, just found out that Crying in H Mart is a New York Times bestseller.
Okay, so I've been holding on to this one just because I think it's like such a theme song, but Dreams by the Cranberries, because like it's so joyous and it's like such main character music.
Movie soundtrack, definitely. All right. Thank you for all like the things that I don't know. I'll definitely look up for sure. But here's another round of short interviews. This or that. I'm sure you're familiar. You just choose which one you prefer. Starting with paperback or hardcover books.
You know, I love going to bookstores and finding like vintage paperback spines, and I feel like they're just always good and always iconic. And so I was so excited to have my own vintage paperback. So I guess paperback.
Wow. Okay. Read all day or write all day?
Read all day. Well, I don't know. I mean, if the writing's going well, I guess I would pick that. But right now, I read all day sounds great.
Yeah. All right. Music or lyrics?
I think I'm someone who has to start with lyrics. So, but you know, it's so impossible to separate
like intertwined.
them. You know,
how about just noticing, noticing something like when you're hearing new music for the first time? Do you notice the melodies first, or like the complications?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of like meeting someone. It's like music is like the face and body,
the initial,
and lyrics are the mind.
The depth.
You know? Yeah,
that's an amazing way to put it. Okay, so music, right?
I guess music is what I first noticed. Certainly, yeah.
Okay,
but it means nothing if the lyrics are crap.
That's true. Read one book at a time or read multiple books? Are you like monogamous or
I'm pretty monogamous
okay.
with books. I like the idea of juggling multiple books at a time, but I'm not that way.
Okay, fair. When reading, bookmark or dog ear?
I am guilty of dog earing.
Did you dog ear your own books?
I did get like special Crying in H Mart bookmarks made, but I typically lose them a lot, so I do like end up I'm not opposed to dog earing, especially I think when you're a creative writing student, like you become accustomed to like underlining and
You feel like it's a good way of interacting with the book when you actually mutilated it enough.
Yeah, I'm okay
you-
with abusing books in that way. Yeah.
Okay, great. When reading, do you prefer music or silence?
Silence.
Lastly, early bird or night owl?
I think that I am probably a night owl that wants to be an early bird.
That's exactly how I feel. Thank you for saying that. All right. Just a couple more questions before I let you go. Do you have a ritual for cooking dinner, composing a song, and writing a book? That's quite a complicated ask, but I hope you can name something.
For cooking. I think that with all of them, I try my best. That's like my ritual is like,
That's the ritual.
with cooking, like I think that there's like something that, also something similar is that there's like something that's cloying at me that needs to come out in this way. So like it's either a dish that I've been craving or like an idea that's been dogging me or a melody that's in my head. And I don't know. It's like this intuitive itch that I need to start something. But beyond that, I don't know if I have much of a ritual. Oh, one ritual I did have when I did this book, and I also did it for when I wrote Psychopomp, was I had a little Japanese like daruma, and I filled in one of the eyes when I started, and I filled the other one in when I finished. I did that for Psychopomp and also this book.
Oh my gosh, that's an amazing idea. I think I should
It's
try
great.
to do that for my next album.
It's worked well for me. So
okay, noted. If you could choose one Korean dish to eat forever for the rest of your life, what would it be?
kimchi jjigae, kimchi stew.
Okay. Can you pick three of
That's
your
like the
favorite
chicken
tattoos?
adobo of like.
Oh, sorry. Oh yeah,
like,
of the Philippines. Have you tried adobo?
I have. I like want to have. I feel like everyone's like adobo is like very different. So I feel like I need to try like many different.
Many, but you've had an experience of trying it, and did you like it?
I did. Yeah, I did like it.
Okay.
But I haven't tried that much Filipino food, and everyone. I feel like it's such an incredible cuisine that I need to learn more about.
If you come here, we definitely take you around and give you all the best Filipino food. Maybe
I would love that.
You can learn to
hit
make
you up,
something.
Reese. Yeah.
Yes, please do. Can you pick three of your favorite tattoos and maybe just explain like very small story about them?
Yeah. Let's see. Three of my favorite tattoos. I like. Okay, so this is Kewpie.
Yeah, the
from
mayonnaise.
From the
baby.
mayonnaise. My mom every New Year's would make this like scallop sashimi mixed with Japanese mayonnaise and like masago like fish roe, and then we would just eat it with seaweed. It was so good. And so every time I go to H Mart, I always have to buy Kewpie mayonnaise because I really like it on everything. I guess I have to say it's up here. Oh yeah, my Oma tattoo is obviously really special. Like, I feel like it's like such a classic thing to have like mom in a heart, and I love having Oma on there.
Very Popeye.
Yeah, what else? I also have I should have picked easier ones. I guess I really like my hand tattoos. These are the Korean trigrams on the flag, and then Breath of the Wild Zelda. This is the Sheikah slate, and
my god,
that game was
I
like one
love
of
that
the first like newer games that I played as an adult. That like changed me, and I really loved it, and it was such a huge inspiration for the Sable soundtrack. And
the soundtrack. Yeah, I actually it actually reminded me of Sable. Actually reminded me a bit of Breath of the Wild. I mean,
yeah,
not in
totally.
terms of like music, but I just love that general vibe, like comforting, and I don't know, very like I love that you mentioned Breath of the Wild. So thanks for that. How about what song you can't get out of your head? Like, do you have one right now?
I really love the Claro song Blouse.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I just like my husband Peter and I just like when that song came out, we just like listened to it probably like 100 times. We were just like obsessed with Blouse. And I just think it's so cool that like she's such a young girl, she's a young woman, and like, you know, she made this like weird pivot that probably a lot of her fan base didn't get. But like is so like my vibe. Like she has this kind of like Joni Mitchell, Karen Carpenter, like really like classic sound.
Yeah.
And then seeing her on late night playing Blouse, like this like pretty complicated classical like guitar finger picking thing alone.
Yeah.
Blew my mind. Like, and I think it's just such a beautiful song. And I just love it. And I have that song stuck in my head all the time.
Yeah, I agree. Like it was a very like an unexpected turn also because immunity was such a huge thing. And I love that she just feels so free to do whatever she wants.
I think she's a true artist, and that's like what
Yeah.
that album felt like to me. Was just like, I don't care what any of you want from me. I'm gonna do this.
Yeah, I'm gonna do this. Yeah. Lastly, what 3 books do you always recommend? Do you have like a list in your head?
Let's see. Well, I just finished Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre, and I you know, her writing is impeccable, and I don't know why it's taken me this long to read it, but I loved that book. I love, you know, Joan Didion's Year of Magical Thinking destroyed me, and is obviously like such a huge hugely important grief memoir, and informed Crying in H Mart very deeply. I would say my 2 favorite books are Richard Ford's Rock Springs, which is a collection of short stories I love, and Marilyn Robinson's Housekeeping. That's like those are the 2 books I mentioned in like every interview, but were very essential in shaping me as a writer, I think.
I actually love short story collections, so I would definitely
read that one.
Pick that up. Thank you so much for being so open and so game to tell your stories. I actually enjoyed so much talking to you and sharing some of my own stories as well.
Me too, Reese.
I really hope that we can connect when you come to the Philippines.
I hope so too. Or if you ever come to the US, let me know.
I'm gonna DM you on Instagram and hope you get to see it. But I wanna ask. I'm sure everybody would also wanna hear before we end. Do you have any message to your Filipino readers? Because there are a lot of people who really draw strength from what you've made, and also from your music as well. So feel free to say something to them.
Yeah, I guess just thank you so much for your support and for reading this book. Like from a very early on, I felt like so much support from the Philippines for my music before even in the US, and I was just kind of like, how did they find this, and why are they like so enthusiastic? But it's really kept me going, and it was so important for me to get to play in Manila, and I can't wait to come back, and I miss all of you, and thank you so much for your support.
Thank you so much, Michelle, for joining us tonight. I really appreciate your time, and it's lovely to meet you. I hope that we can connect online and in real life someday. And thank you so much also, Fully Booked, for arranging this event, and getting to hear Michelle's insights. Been very life-giving for me. So thank you so much for spending time with me and with everybody.
Reese.
Thank you. And I would like to remind everybody, by the way, that if you get your own copy of Crying in H Mart after this interview, the first 20 people actually get a free reading starting pack, which includes Korean snacks and other surprise gifts. So if you want to get on that, just go to fullybookedonline.com and get your own copy if you haven't gotten it already. And yeah, Michelle, thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful day. I know that it's pretty early where you are, but I really hope that you have fun today and you have a restful day. Enjoy your break from tour, and hopefully I get to see you live someday. And hopefully you can come to one of my shows as well. However impossible that may be, I'm gonna bug you about it. But thank you so much.
Thanks, Reese. You too.
Thank you.